This podcast is brought to you by Giant Food. And today, more than ever, they are committed to you because we are all in this together so we can continue to share the little things that matter.
Recorded live from the lobby of the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Peace, everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. This podcast is where dynamic people of color in the food and agriculture space share their personal food journeys, passions, and perspectives that stem from the land, all exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting here on Full Service Radio. So I have a special guest today, Amanda Stephenson, who is the founder of the Fresh Food Factory in Southeast DC, which is a market and social enterprise that engages low to moderate income residents in Ward 8. Amanda is a farm girl, growing up on her family's land in Virginia, but then she made her way down to DC, where she is rooted in Anacostia. And as the first female-owned, Black-owned, healthy, and ethnic food market in Southeast DC, Amanda is dedicated to providing nourishing options for her community. Welcome to Edible Activist, Amanda. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Did I do that intro right, girl?
You did. You haven't skipped or missed a beat, and I think you took a lot of my talking points.
Yes, because I had to make sure I got it right.
Great introduction. Thank you.
Yes, because, a sister doing the daggone thing. I just want to make sure that my acknowledgments are on point and that I don't skip a beat, because you are doing so many great things. And, I've had the privilege of being in your space a couple times, and most recently, the wonderful DPR event that our homegirl Kamari Norman did, and that entire panel, and just showcasing some of the foods from your market and chefs, and which we'll get into all of that. But anyway, I'm just so happy to have you on the show. And definitely, this is an opportunity to learn more about Amanda's, background and her journey to where she is now. Because as I said before, I know you're from Virginia, and you are living in DC, where you have your market and everything. But definitely just want you to take us back, because I know you grew up on a farm, and just want you to just walk us through that journey, like growing up in Virginia and what that was all like, and being with your family.
Wow. Yes, I think growing up on a farm, everybody knows usually is arduous work. There's a lot that has to be done. And I grew up on an animal farm. Most of everything that we had was game. So you had a lot of ducks, pheasants, guineas, turkeys, chickens, any kind of duck you think of. We had it. Also, too, we had horses, we had goats, we had a lot of different things. And my father had his children, all of us, active in the operation and upkeep of the farm. So it was a lot of work from school, starting before you go to school. You have to wake up when the chickens crow and the rooster crows, and, get things prepared before you go off. And a lot of that fell on us because he was blind for the majority of my life, not just legally blind, but totally blind. And he would definitely say he was a challenging man. Anybody who knew him could attest to that. But that transferred in a lot of aspects of his life. I think he even was so challenging that he challenged death. And I say that because when I was young, I think I was around the age of 10, he was given the prognosis of having terminal cancer. And they gave him 6 months to a year to live. And we found out in church he gave that testimony. He was just talking about it, but he then told his doctors, nobody could tell me my life expectancy. That's between me and my maker. And
Mm.
yes, from that faith that he had, he like surpassed that expectancy by like 18 years. He passed in 2008, and it was just amazing to see his transformation. He challenged that thing. He willed it into existence. He passed the morning of his birthday. He told all of us to come. But just saying that to say someone who's that challenging, it's something to kind of deal with, because we didn't really have room to kind of make up a reason why, because anything that you could think of was not a reason. It was kind of like an excuse. It's kind of like, if I could do it, I'm blind and I have cancer. Oh, yeah. And gout. If I could get out here and do it, you could do it. So I think he gave me, or instilled, that can do, will do, no exception spirit. And I think, sort of like, if you want change to happen, you have to get out and make it happen. Yes, you have to have faith in God, and He's willed you, or things in you, and you got to kind of like will things into existence. We have to be the change that we want to see. So whatever it is that we have endeavored, we have to live that out, and we can't really succumb to a lot of conditions and labels and things that are placed upon us. So just growing up in that family structure of work and discipline and routine and getting up, I'm like, I'm on the first train out of here. I'm going off to college. And once I go to college, I am never going back. So it's just how life kind of like sets you up. Is just, I just see that as preparation for my life. I never thought that I would be like returning back to farming, and it just showed me like the power of faith. It showed me the power of food. I just forgot to mention, a lot of what he had to do to help match that faith was make lifestyle changes. He had to, of course, change his diet, how he ate, what we had on the farm. So we did like some light vegetation in conjunction with all of the animals that we had. And also, like, he just started like more intentional exercises and things. And we have to tell him, hey, lift your foot up here, do this, do that, whatever. He would get out there and do it with some instruction. So it's a lot of God and a lot of us, and a lot of doing what's naturally good for you to see whatever change that you want to come into fruition.
Wow. So Dad had to have been a total inspiration. There were no days off. He said, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yes, that was his mentality, and he took that kind of attitude everywhere he went. Basically, he was just wanting us to, I guess, do the same. He didn't really accept less from anybody. So, and that was part of why a lot of people thought he was challenging too.
Wow. Now, where exactly in Virginia, Amanda?
I grew up in a small town called Surry, one blinking light in the middle of the town. It wasn't a stop light or any of that. It wasn't that much traffic or congestion. But when I'm telling people about it, because they probably have heard of Surry, England before they've heard of Surry, Virginia, I always give them the reference of Williamsburg or Newport News or Smithfield. People know like Smithfield, products, their ham or Gwaltney. So we were more like, we even had like a festival for the town. It was a pork, peanut, and pine festival. So pretty much everyone was a farmer, or it was like a nod to that, because that's what the area was known for. Though small, Smithfield was more of a prominent and more known town, and that was mainly because of the hogs and the peanuts that were grown there.
Wow. Okay. So I laugh at my mom. We joke about it all the time. My mom is from an extremely small town in Alabama called Butler, and we chuckle because there was one light with a four-way stop sign hanging up in the air, and one like jailhouse to the left, and everything else is dirt road. But that's where she grew up, and she loved growing up in Alabama. So when I hear about those small towns, I always have to think back to where my mom grew up, and it sounds very much alike.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so you went off to school, and then did that journey lead you directly to DC after school, where you started the Fresh Food Factory?
Well, I would say no. My ideal was New York. I went to undergrad for commercial art, graphic design. Everybody in my family, my siblings, everybody like draws, write, create. But I think a lot of that comes to, and I am talking about my father a lot, my mom too. I think she was more of a nurturing spirit. My father used to, when he used to write with his right hand, draw with his left because he was naturally left-handed. But his siblings, he has two remaining. Three one just passed a couple weeks ago, and he had three sisters still remaining, and they were all in their 90s. So he has two sisters that are 92, and all of them write, and all of them would create. So I do have like some ceramic pieces that were made by one of my aunts who's still here at 92 and very lucent. So right now we're planning the ceremony for her sister, which will be tomorrow. But just saying that to say, art has been something that has been in my family. It's a generational thing, and I went to school for it because fine arts is great, and that's something that I could do too. But in going to school, when I did, it was just more opportunity. They say when you take art and make it digital. So I went to school for commercial art, graphic design at Virginia State University, and that is a land grant university. And from my tenure and relationships there, I was able to reconnect to the university, which then had come, I think back in 2016, they came up here. And what we did was we were able to assemble some hydroponic systems to kind of like help people to learn how to grow using hydroponic systems. And they're definitely willing to come back up as we implement more programming in the growth space, along with like local farmers, UDC, and etc. So my initial plan was not to come to DC, and it was not to, I guess, work in farming. It was in the arts, and New York was definitely my idea because if not going to London or somewhere like that, New York is the place for like fashion, crafting, and like design work. So I went there for an internship, but I landed here in DC after my internship ended and made DC my home.
Wow. Well, having lived in New York City myself in three boroughs, I can completely understand why that's the artistry mecca, music mecca, the mecca of creatives. So I completely understand. So the Fresh Food Factory, how did you come to, this to launching, this entire enterprise in wanting to offer up something different to Ward 8, those in Ward 8 and surrounding areas in the DMV?
Sure. Um, when I moved here, I think 2002. And since I lived in different parts of the city, and I did some work east of the river, and I started a nonprofit back in 2003. And in that, I wanted to better people's circumstances, better their quality of life by addressing certain disparities that I saw, and health being one of them. So under the auspices of my nonprofit, I would create different businesses so people could walk through training through the nonprofit and walk into opportunities to increase their quality of life, such as the Fresh Food Factory, such as other things that had stemmed from the nonprofit. But in 2007, 2008, the market happened, and your assets went underwater, and I had to start working for another entity, and I put my nonprofit on the back burner. But all these years later, still doing work with the company that I was working for, but just just seeing other issue in community, seeing other things that we need to do, certain things that were promised that hadn't changed. A lot of people just felt like they couldn't obtain optimum health, that they couldn't afford opportunity, that they'll never be able to actually own a home. There's a certain level of mentality, certain level of label, certain the disadvantaged label that I think a lot of us we have adopted because we've seen the impacts generationally. We've seen our parents or maybe our grandparents or our immediate surrounding, or that's the messaging that we have subscribed to. And from my father's walk and from different things that he had attained prior to becoming blind and had his bout of cancer. Prior to that, though African American, in I would say the South because that's Virginia, he would tell us tales of the ownership of property being taken by eminent domain and other things happening that dissuaded or hindered or hampered a lot of prosperity for African Americans. But in spite of how he took certain avenues or he tried to address things a certain way or still had a positive outlook, I think, a lot of that, a lot of people hadn't been exposed to. Maybe they didn't have someone to have that diehard mentality to kind of say, it doesn't matter what somebody else says, or don't think like that. You have to change your thinking or keep this thinking at the forefront so you don't succumb to the pressures or the environment or news, for instance, what we're going through now, or whatever it may be. It's just no matter what obstacle you can achieve, you can attain. And I guess his belief in making the perceived impossible possible is one that I have adopted. And I'm not going to say is easy, but I am going to say, as life goes and we grow, I have learned the messaging that he's been trying to teach all the more.
Wow. Your dad had that language. I mean, he had the experience and he was certainly all about ownership, and he knew the power of Black ownership and the wealth that we've always created for a very long time, for centuries, just in what we built And so, as I was doing your introduction, I was totally intentional about it because, well, I'm always intentional, but also really just wanting to frame who you are and just capturing what you've built, because in Southeast DC and in east of the river, which there's a lot of not necessarily play, but we have the issue of food access, ownership, entrepreneurship, and just what isn't available to us or at proximity. But with the Fresh Food Factory, it's more than just a market, and you're intentional about, letting people know that this isn't just a market. This is a market with ethnic foods as well. So foods, this is more than just coming, to get a bag of rice. Like, we have a variety, So really just wanting you to break down like the products that you have at this market and wanting that to be accessible to the community as well.
Sure. I want to finish the last question because I thought about it more. I'm like, she did ask a specific question, but I wanted to make sure, I'm answering that too. So, yes, a lot of the inspiration had started from my father and started from seeing ills and addressing the ills, or the thought from community is we've been wanting change for so long. And I think a lot of times, the big box stores aren't going to come. If they were going to come, they would have. And I don't think that capital should be like the only motivator. It should be, social for the betterment of people. And I think too, a lot of times someone from the community could be as prosperous. They could know, same or similar information, but they just need to be capitalized. They need to be supported. But someone who's a part of the fabric of the community, someone who's truly caring for the community and want the best for the community, may be like the better persons to address community ills. especially food, and seeing the benefits that my father had. I knew like I couldn't come in with like white sugar, white flour, a lot of different things that were inferior if I wanted superior outcomes. So I had to
Mhm.
have a lot of processed food, but come in with, fresh options. And if I do have processed, or if I do have boxed cereal, if I do have whatever I have, because I do like to snack, I am going to say, I would have better options. So I think not just pushing a diet, not just saying you need to do X, Y, and Z. I think people need to have more informed, um, they need to have more information. So, and they need to have access. So, access is a part of it. We have healthy foods. Everything in there is a nod to better health, healthier options. We have a lot of products that are made by local purveyors. And of course, again, like you mentioned, we have ethnic foods. As we know, we have a lot of medicinal properties in food that are grown in other countries around the world, East, whatever. A lot of countries in Africa, Middle Eastern countries, the islands, they're not represented on the main shelves of a lot of the big box stores. When you go down the international aisles, you don't really see foods that are indigenous to those areas and regions, but a lot of them are healing foods. So I wanted to bring that to residents who may not have been familiar. But also, too, DC is a melting pot. We have a lot of different people from Nigeria, Ethiopia, Trinidad, you name it. A lot of us are here, but they can't really find food that are, foods that are indigenous to the areas that they're from. So they may send monies off to kind of like pay for it to be shipped over here if they can, or they may go off to Maryland or some parts of Virginia to actually acquire foods that are not readily available in their community. And I too felt like an immigrant, not just me, but a lot of people who are in Ward 7 and 8. We get together, we have family meetings, we talk about different things that we want to see in our community, and just the hope and the promise and what could be. But instead of waiting for someone else to come, it's just like, I just felt that, you know what, I could definitely do that myself, because it's so much of a need here. And we all feel like immigrants. We have to go across a bridge for a better quality of life, especially when it comes to our health, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to food, you name it. I think we suffer because the access hasn't been here historically. So I definitely wanted to see change made, but it was taking too long. So again, I think that, a lot of times we have to be that agent of change that we want to see.
All right, folks, we're going to take a really quick break and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Perfect Day, produced by Artists Authentic. For more of Authentic's work, visit allornothingstudios.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Giant Food. Whether you are concerned about diabetes, heart health, losing weight, or just want to improve family meal times, Giant has a team of nutritionists ready to help you make the best decisions to meet your health and wellness goals. You can check out their personalized consultations online or by phone. Just go to giantfood.com/nutrition, or they have nutritionists who are available to answer any of your questions at nutrition@giantfood.com. So, Amanda, one of the things that really stood out to me, well, actually, let me go back. So, you were a part of a summit last year. It was the Chesapeake Food Summit that took place in Washington, D.C. And I so very much enjoyed your story. And that's, I extracted a lot from that. And that's how I got to know just a little bit more about you and your story. And one of the things that really jumped out, and we talked about this just briefly, earlier in the show, was about Black entrepreneurship and wealth. And, with the fresh food, factory, which obviously, you didn't want to wait for change. Like you said, you needed to be that agent of change, and something needed to happen now. But also there's the entrepreneurial side to it. And, one of the things that really stood out, and please correct me because I know I'm probably not going to frame this in the most accurate way, but you said that Black businesses have been GMO'd, genetically modified for a very long time. And especially in places like DC, where prices are increasing, and Black, owners of restaurants and businesses, aren't able to hold on to their properties or able to hold on to family businesses because they're being priced out. And the decline, of these businesses in what was predominantly Black neighborhoods. And so definitely just want to touch on the entrepreneurial and wealth building side, to having a business, especially when it comes to our real estate and owning the block, and taking care of our people,
Right.
So that really stood out to me. I was like, whoo, girl, I was fanning in the crowd, fanning.
You're hilarious. I definitely say, just looking at statistics where they talked about like the life expectancy of residents of Ward 7 and 8, and the business life expectancy parallel to that. So we have to look at all of this as health disparity. Yes, health is, yes, food is, but wealth is too. Our ownership of things. And Black businesses have been so essential. They have been the fabric to our community. Parents, our grandparents, before the 70s happened, before crack happened, before a lot of that, we were owning a lot and we were doing well, very well. But of course, we've seen a lot of change over the past decades. And I'm not going to say we shouldn't have certain businesses or it shouldn't be a mix, but I am going to say the help has been disproportionate. It hasn't been in the favor of a lot of the minorities. And I am not going to say this is from me. I'm not going to say that this is a fact. And I am not going to say that, statistics won't back me up. I would definitely say, just look at the news, whether we're talking about recent helps, whether we talk about ownership in general. It hasn't been because Blacks are lazy. It hasn't been because of, just one thing. I just think that whether it's reaching somebody through messaging and helping them to understand that they can, because generationally they have been told that they couldn't. We haven't been getting a lot of supports when it comes to technical assistance at the level of other communities. We have been undercapitalized, or we can't get capital because of whatever the situation may have been. But there are a lot of systematic or systemic issues that definitely need to be addressed for us to have healthy communities. And ownership is definitely key. So the Fresh Food Factory, we have products on our shelves, and a lot of them are renowned brands that you get from a distributor. But we do have a great percentage of those that are made by locals, and those locals are minority businesses. So we see the Fresh Food Factory is not only a place to actually grow as it relates to your health, but grow as it relates to your wealth. So creating an economy where people could actually come in and see their product on the shelf, and somebody's going to buy that product. Not only does that better the person who is the patron, and they're taking a locally made product home with healthy ingredients, but that's giving that business owner monies back that they could have to make sure that they have longevity. And fighting for shelf space has been an issue a lot for small local minority businesses, as we know, and really having your brand and like foods represented in a market where it hasn't been historically is sometimes challenging. I think now, as we cry out a little bit more and say, hey, well, where are we? I think we've been heard recently, but I think, it's been far too long that had happened. But I definitely see going back to what we've done originally. We started out as an incubator. That's what the name came from, the Fresh Food Factory. It's a place where people are making healthy, fresh products for communities. So we were creating a whole food ecosystem. So not only did you have a place that you were just making the products, but you had an area in which, you had some products growing. So through hydroponic systems, and we had raised beds, you could get, growth. You would get your leafy greens, you would get different things like that. So teaching community how to be sufficient, how to be resilient, how to be engaged in the educational process. That's a lot of what we like to do, not only offer food access, but offer education. So it's very important, especially in these times, to kind of know how to grow food. So that's one thing I would definitely say, be educated on how to grow your own. Whether it's just in your community, if everybody is growing different things, you can have a barter system, you can have a pay system, but everybody survives. Everybody is able to kind of like share and have better options. There are a lot of things in the concept of the Fresh Food Factory that will bring together a healthy community. And also, too, the kitchen space, the prep space. We had kitchen space, and that's something that we are looking to move into again. So again, we could create that whole food ecosystem, closing a loop on it, and making sure that, and two, making sure that everybody can have access to food. So we understand certain foods may be pricey for some people, but we do accept EBT. And also, too, we eliminate food waste, and we donate foods from the store to our nonprofit, the one that I mentioned to you that I started back in 2003. And we're able to collect other foods from different contributors along the food chain to give it out to people whose checks or benefits don't stretch throughout the whole month. So people are able to come and get healthier food options. So that's something that we made a priority since starting the market in May. And it's something that we're still doing now while we have this pandemic happening. We've been offering Corona care packages or boxes to residents so they can have access, because as we know, sometimes it could be challenging for a lot of people to get access.
Wow. Amanda, you are loaded. Y'all are loaded with good stuff. Good stuff. Oh, I love hearing all of this. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, what is the future of the Fresh Food Factory? You are such a visionary, Amanda, and I know that you are also just loaded with ideas and plans and just a bigger vision. Not that you need to break all that down for us, because your vision is your vision. But what is the future of the Fresh Food Factory?
One thing that we've done, we started 2019, kind of piloting it and just seeing if people are truly interested. And as we know, they are, is doing like BMI, body mass index, diet and DNA, as well as metabolic testing. So we know like every body is different. And we could just say, hey, you know what? These are the numbers that we're getting based on the assessment given. So we're doing that at the market too. So we can have a reference to actually start to kind of say, hey, Melissa, based on what we're getting, maybe if you consume more of this or less of this, and maybe if you do these types of exercises, then you'll get to your optimum health. We have these alkaline products. We have whatever it may be, to kind of like help you to come up with a routine that's good for you. So that's definitely something that we are looking at it growing a great deal, because we know the people who've been affected and the communities that have been affected by Corona, a lot of them, majority of them have been Black and brown communities. And a lot of that is contributed to the lack of resources, lack of healthy foods, poor immune system, pre-existing conditions. But where do they stem from? Poor immune system and the inability to fight them off because of we have inferior foods in our communities and we don't really have a proper defense. So instead of focusing on disease and issue, or we don't have this in our community, again, we have to be that change agent. We have to focus on health. How can we do it? If it has to happen and we have to be the one, we have to do that. So I think, that's definitely something that we're going to keep at the forefront as we move throughout these next few months into the fall. But we're looking at expanding, to say the least. We're looking at more locations for our markets, as well as including the farming, as well as the kitchen space, the prep space for our small business members back into a lot of our programming. We still offer food education because you can have access, but a lot of people may not know how to prepare certain foods, may not know the benefits of them. By sharing that type of information, and even cooking classes has been something that we've worked at since opening the market back in last year, and also letting people taste through those things, through that education, through that exposure. People then say, yes, this is definitely something that tastes good. I didn't know how it tasted. Oh yes, it could be made easy. And I think a lot of times we fall prey to a lot of misnomers or a lot of negative talk about a thing, or whether it be a navy bean or jackfruit. It may not smell as great, but just knowing the benefit, how to flavor it, or chickpeas. Yes, people may see that as a bean, but do you know as a substitute? Do you know how to use this? Have you tasted teff flour? Or do you understand we always hear about jambalaya, and a lot of us have tasted it, but it comes from West Africa and jollof rice, and it's a lot of culture and a lot of agriculture and a lot of preparation in our education that we offer. So we definitely see the importance of that, the benefit that we've seen thus far, and knowing is something that should be handed down generationally. And some people could say, if they grew up in certain areas, maybe their parents didn't grow up, didn't have access, don't know how to prepare. They may have like one parent in the household and they don't have time to prepare. So they're getting these box meals or whatever. And it is just not a great contributor to our health and our immunity. So I think we've fallen somewhat, but there's always hope. And now is a perfect time for a fresh and a new start.
Amanda, where can folks find you at? How can they connect with you?
They can connect with us. The website is The Fresh Food Factory. And we have social media presence. We are on Instagram and Facebook is The Fresh Food Factory. Facebook is The Fresh Food Factory Farm and Food Hub. And also, too, you could call me. My number is 202-744-1873. Well, that's the number to the market. And people have been calling to place orders in this time as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yes, reach out, place orders, support. I still need to make it out, Amanda. I still need to make it out there. I need to make it out to the Fresh Food Factory. So, but no, this has been a pleasure. But I'm not going to let you go too quickly because I got a few rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, what is your favorite veggie?
Asparagus.
Oh my gosh, someone just said that. Okay, awesome. What is your favorite fruit?
Mango.
Yes. All right. So sweet, spicy, sour, salty, or bitter?
Always sweet.
All right now. Lastly, one action step anyone can take right now to take control of their health.
Education and grow your own.
In her words, thank you again, Amanda. I really appreciate you. This has been wonderful. And thank you all for listening, and peace.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We are here live on Full Service Radio every Wednesday at 11 a.m., where you can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow me at Food Talks in Color on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Are you an edible activist? Sure you are. Come join me on the show. I would love to feature you. Just shoot me a DM on the gram. Peace and blessings all. And remember, there is no culture without agriculture.